Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. You are here for Inside the Audio Workflow of Mike Malyan with Antelope Audio. And for that, of course, we need the man himself, Mike Malyan. Mike, welcome.
So thankful for being able to come here and chat about my crazy world of audio goodies in this wonderful place with you guys.
Well, we're glad you joined us. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that other strange character on the screen right there. You guys know that you've never seen us in the same place at the same time. Usually we trade duties, but this was just going to be
Hey,
such a cool event today. Mike, we had to invite him on. We're huge fans of what you guys do. And I want to send a huge thank you to Antelope Audio for making this happen and for Monuments for adding to my Spotify playlist.
that's
Yes,
so
if you
awesome.
if you haven't checked them out yet and you're into music, go for it. You won't be disappointed. Derek
Thank
and
you
I
Yes.
guys.
Derek and I have been fanboying all day, and we've just really we've only brushed the surface. We
We
haven't
have.
even gotten into the whole catalog, Mike.
We
That's
haven't.
awesome. That's
We
so
haven't.
awesome that you're
We
so into it.
we almost I'm dead serious. We almost canceled the event as we knew it today, and we're like, we're just gonna have him play music. Let's just
Yeah,
play a
we were
set.
we were actually we were actually going to get on a plane and head over to England and
Hey,
and just be
it's early
live in the
days. We can still do
studio.
this. We can do that for real. And also, I do love to do that and just take on performances and take on requests. It's one of the things that I've done so much over, well, since the great shutdown of 2020. It was kind of like the retooling and the reskilling of how do I actually perform anything to anyone. And it sort of became my show for a while that I would just have a bunch of friends log on Twitch, and I would just play whatever they wanted me to play, and I could easily whittle away 3 or 4 hours like twice a week. I'm intending to get back to doing that quite soon as well, because it's just so much fun to do, and I think I always dreamt of doing something like that as a kid as well, but when I was younger, like I'm not gonna get a TV show, you know what I mean? Like there's that's in my mind that was never gonna happen. And to be
Here
fair,
you are. Here you are in
yeah,
the B&H
now
event
it's
space,
normal.
Mike.
I
This is the
know.
big leagues over here.
Well, I
Yeah,
No
think
yeah.
that
Now
pressure.
we're really going.
yeah, that's the cool thing now is it used to just be like, all right, you were a musician, and it was one of two things. It was like you either really committed and you lived in the back of a van and you ate, you know, bologna sandwiches, or you picked up like a job at like Blockbuster. And now it's like musicians can Twitch. You know, you Mike, you stream on Twitch and you have a YouTube channel, a very successful YouTube channel. You're teaching people the craft so that we have less drummers that are out there like Scott Jolson and more Mike Malyans. So
I
it's awesome,
Burn.
man. It's
Epic burn, Derek.
epic burn. I had to throw it in. So for those of you that are just tuning in, Monuments drummer Mike Malyan is joining us today, courtesy of Antelope Audio. He brought his whole setup there. This guy's making us look like complete amateurs. So we're gonna be taking questions throughout. This is just gonna be like Mike letting us into his studios, essentially is. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to get them in. We'll throw them right to Mike, and Mike's gonna show us what he does and how the Antelope Audio's family of products helps him do that. So, Mike, we're going to kick it over to you, and we'll kind of bother you throughout.
That sounds awesome. I'm always up
Awesome.
for a discussion at any point because some of the stuff I'm doing here is quite technically, it's a bit crazy, and there's a lot of stuff I might take for granted as knowing that you might not know about. So if any of this sounds like stuff that you want to do, and there's a little bit that you're not quite sure of, then just let me know because I really love to share that kind of information. And but ultimately, what we have here is my little world of dreams and in my garden studio at home, and I have a full-fledged drum kit over here that is fully mic'd up and set up and ready to go pretty much at a moment's notice. I have a variety of other little things I play around with in here because, I mean, with my work with Monuments, I tend to compose quite a lot and write for the albums that we put out. But I also do things like drum session work. Like a lot of the time, I'm a composer for my own solo artistry, which isn't entirely released yet. But I'm just still kind of developing that. And I also do functions, drums, keys, and sometimes bass. All these different things. Well, I mean, you know how it's like. I'm sure a lot of you know that with being a musician in 2022, sometimes it's both necessary and enjoyable to sort of retool and switch hats and try different things out. One thing I've always known deeply within myself is that I tend to get kind of unnaturally bored of something very quickly. I have like the attention span of a peanut, so a lot of the time I'm trying to think about what can I do that allows me to stay at least in the frame of what I love doing, so that while I'm being distracted, I'm building another skill and I'm building transferable skills. So, for example, I was a pianist before I was a drummer, actually. So I'm really excited at the moment. I've been actually investing more time into my keyboard world than I have done in a while, and I think that stuff just keeps me feeling really like everything feels fresh a lot of the time in my drum playing. As when you play multiple instruments, you can develop skills that improve those instruments, but also it helps my ear not to get too singularly focused. If you're playing drums in a band, as you'll know, you'll need to fit into the song, and every song's groove is just a whole different world. Sometimes an entire generation of thought and process has gone into this whole thing, and just fitting into it is not as simple as just playing the same beat twice, So that's the ethos behind why I have so many things available. But the big thing for me is that every audio interface and every setup I've ever had has not been able to allow me to do the kind of things that I can do now. And that's where I throw it over really to the Antelope audio family of interfaces. I run a Orion Studio Synergy Core as my primary interface. I'll just show you the control panel for that now because I haven't got a camera set up on the front of my desk. This is the kind of the master world of everything that I've got going on. But I also have one of their discrete 8 Pro line of interfaces. So I'm running the two together, but the fun part is that this interface isn't actually connected to this computer. It's connected to my laptop, which is set up right in front of me here. I'm not sure if you can actually see it. Yeah, no, if I move that, my speaker stand hits my desk. But yeah, it's an interesting system because I really was looking at a lot of different options about how can I do what I do. Of course, the Orion is an amazing unit. It's got 12 mic preamps, but it doesn't quite have enough for me with the drums. I tend to run 15 mics at once. I've got 3 kick drum mics, 2 snares. I've got 3 normal tom mics, 1 underfloor sub mic for like extra sub goodness, and then 4 spot mics, overheads and room mics as well. So there's a lot going on, and one of the most difficult things as a drummer, is some of you will know, is self-engineering as a drummer is just the hardest thing. It's like, how do you hit the snare and gain yourself up and look at the level if you don't have the actual interfaces right next to you? And if you've got the interfaces right next to you, then your speakers are probably next to you, and you're surrounded by cymbals and resonating things. And yes, this is a small room, but at least here my speakers are facing me. And so one of the things that I absolutely love about the Antelope stuff is that not only it's remote controllable preamps as a default on everything, every line, all the way down to the Zengo, of which I actually have one on the keyboard rig there. But they also work over the network. So as I was showing this control panel here, is this entire interface and all of its routing and all of its effects are all completely controllable via the network. So this computer could have been anywhere on the properties network. It could have been, I could be down in the house and just on a network computer, and I can then actually, we've got some tie lines, but I don't even need them because I can just control everything remotely from anywhere else. So for anyone else who finds themselves in a multi-room environment or just a self-engineering environment where it doesn't make sense to be next to a preamp, having something remote controllable is just the gold standard, because preamp gain really matters. You can really end up screwing your drum signals by having them too hot. There's a sweet spot around like -15, -12 decibels where you hit it and you get this great controlled bleed. You don't get so much bleed from when you have it at high gain because it's not so compressed, and then you can work with it really nicely. But
so, Mike, I'm going to throw out the first what I'll call dumb question here, because I'm looking at this as a complete newbie also. Derek and I, like we told you in the green room, we're not audio engineers over here. We're just regular Joes. And so when you're talking about, obviously this has changed the game in the sense of a digital sense, where now you can control everything through the computer. And how do you get all of that information? So you've got all those mics. How do you get that into the computer itself so that now you can control it digitally?
It's a really great question, and it's honestly it's my favorite part about all of this. I'll show you real quick. I'll give you a line by line of roughly what's going on before I dive too deep into it. But what I want you to imagine is that basically everything that's going on inside the interface is basically like having an array of patch bays before it even hits the computer. So what we're used to with audio interfaces is I plug microphone in to socket 1. I then go to the only way I can then hear that is to go into my DAW or like Cubase is what I use, or Pro Tools or Logic. You go and you assign input 1 into an audio channel, and then you monitor it, and then you can suddenly hear it. And that's kind of the traditional way of running things directly through your interface and monitoring it through software. We call it software monitoring. But what I love doing that I never had done before, but with the Antelope devices I really thrive with doing, is direct monitoring, where you can actually control the sound of inputs coming into the device without even running it through a DAW. Case in point, you'll see that I have this microphone channel here. The routing of that is actually going from this preamp here. It's the second preamp on this device. And it doesn't actually go directly into this mixer. I'll talk about that in a second. But this mixer here is everything I hear. So if I turn this up and down, I will hear myself in a different level. And then this mixer can go to anywhere I want. It doesn't actually have to just go to my speakers. I could record this whole mixer of all sorts of different things. And I get 4 of them with this device. What you can't see behind my face is that we actually have 4 mixers. This one here is doing a different job. Mixer 2 is my speakers. Mixer 3 is actually what you're hearing. And then Mixer 4 is a separate thing that I'll go into later. But basically, this second mixer here, you'll see the levels look a little bit different. This changes what you hear. And the great reason for that is that this whole device allows me to pipe things directly into an audio input that Zoom is just happy to accept. And this isn't something that I've experienced before. It uses, the way it calls things is computer play and computer record are like what we're used to with our audio interfaces, inputs and outputs. So my recording input here, which it's my 3rd and 4th actual channels that Windows has access to. It can see all 4 first stereos, and Windows can make use of them however it wants. That's going to you. That's coming out of that mixer and just piped straight into Zoom. So I can do anything I want, and you'll just hear it. And then there are other things going on there as well. So does that follow so far that we've just got this entire new world before we even hit the computer? And in this state, I'm talking and hearing myself and you're hearing me, and there's no DAW going on whatsoever. Like if I open up my Cubase, you'll see that this project I have here, nothing is actually, there's no noise being made on any channel. This is all happening before we even think about involving a workstation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense so far?
100%.
Wow. Yeah.
Amazing. So the key that I love about this is that I feel like it's really important when I'm streaming or if I'm in calls or in lessons to present myself as well as possible. So I try to use good cameras and good lighting, but I also want to make sure my voice sounds great. So when I said that this isn't exactly just going from this mic preamp number 2 straight into this mixer and the other mixer as well in parallel, I'm actually sending it before that into one of the effects chains that's inside the audio interface. And this is where it's pretty different from most other audio interface brands. There are some who do it, but the way that this does it is pretty incredible. So here's my my signal chain. Everything shows peak lights because I play drums in here. I mute it, but it gets loud. I even have auto-tune available on this voice. If I were to play with this, I could totally ramp my voice into auto-tune, and you would only be able to hear certain notes. I think, which I've used this actually before with vocalists. They want to actually tune their voice and just hear it with no latency, no DAW involvement. They just want to hear it immediately. So this runs and it sounds like there's no latency whatsoever. I just have like a nice preamp that's going on that warms up the voice a bit. I play with the EQ, and I also then run like even an 1176 compressor. And this all happens without me having to think about opening a program or anything. It's just, it's set and forget, you know? And so the great thing about this, the device, is that you have access to all of these different modules and different units that you can do things like just have my voice sound great. If I turn all of this off, My voice actually, it sounds quite, meager, and I don't even know if you can hear me because the level's quite low, but you'll hear that as I engage the rest of the signal chain, it just sounds much more podcasty, much more real, and it makes a big difference to how I feel like I come across on the internet. So just having that with the voice is one thing, but while we're thinking about what we can do with all of these different effects, I have this entire mixer here. This is mixer 1, and it's set up in a sort of a serial way. I have my 20 inputs across 2 devices. By the way, I'm sending the audio, the 8 channels from the discrete 8, my second interface, I'm sending that over ADAT into my Orion. So it's a multi-channel over optical, 1 optical cable, and then I've got those 8, and that's how I expand it. So it could be from a different branded audio interface, but the fact it's within the Antelope world means that the routing is just ready to go at a moment's notice. So everything across here, from what you can see kick in all the way up to floor S, which is my sub mic, that's all coming in on the Orion. And then everything from hats to snom, which I'll show you in a minute, it's kind of cool, I'm playing around with my overheads in my room, that's coming in on the other interface, on these preamps here. So, but then all of those inputs from the preamps here and then the ADAT inputs here are going into these effects lines. So I've actually built an entire drum mix, starting from the kick drum here with expanders, various different kinds of compressors and all sorts. I've just been building a really cool mix of drums so that I can actually have an immediate drum mix without even opening up a DAW. Drum mixes are really subjective. One mix won't suit another song. One style won't suit another style. So the kind of mix I've built here, which I'm going to save into my my library of files that you can basically save these mixes, save all your settings. This session, I'm going to basically think of it as kind of like my hip-hoppy, jazzy kind of vibe. I'm going to show you what it sounds like right now. Let me jump over there. I'll just make sure to mute this mic because otherwise everything's going to sound awful. Hello, friends. I'm over here now. Hello, hello. There we go. This mic is now on. So you'll see this is all still working 100% as it would. It's the same kind of thing I had going on with having another mic that's always ready to go. I have a little switch on it so I can turn it off and then the drum kit can actually sound like it's supposed to sound. So this is what the kit mix sounds like. And again, there's no DAW going on here. There's only effects from within my Antelope unit here. So as you can see, it's kind of awesome to be able to switch around just to do that and not have to think about any DAW, anything. I just can immediately practice. I can immediately hear myself. I don't have to think about bringing all of those channels into the DAW, and then the DAW then, as it adds all of that, all of those sounds, the latency increases. And by latency, I mean delay. You hit a kick drum and you actually hear this massive delay between. Yeah, I have this really metal mix inside my my DAW. Actually, I'll show you. I'll just mute the main mix and then I'll turn on this thunder mix. I call it. This is my metal drum mix. So it's again a stylistic mix, which is great to have, but I wish you could know how horrible that feels to play compared to because of the latency, just because of how much delay there is. Even just 8 milliseconds, it's enough to make your kick drum not feel like your kick drum. It feels like someone else is sort of playing, if you know what I mean.
How do you play? Like, how do you get over that? Because I know if what I'm imagining is what you're describing. It's like we've had where I have like an 8-second delay, which is long, but I forgot to turn off my audio and I hear myself coming through. So I'm trying to say one sentence, but I'm hearing the last sentence I said.
Right. Yeah. So you're
throws...
speech jamming. Yeah. Yeah.
So is it similar to that?
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's similar, although you can you need to kind of avoid going too hard with these things. Basically, let me just throw this. We can actually be a bit more personable. Let me see if this will actually work. I've got a different camera here. My control for my cameras is set up on my other thing. There we go. Now you can see me. So yeah, it's a kind of a matter of however many plugins you're using, and the kind of plugins you're using can take a different amount of time in the third-party world. You don't know how long it's going to take to do a certain kind of task with that plugin. For example, things like fab filters, gates. When you're using them live, they kind of cut off the attack of the drum in the moment when you've got them in low latency mode. The moment you engage any amount of look ahead, where it's listening to the signal before it actually acts, so that it can open just it can look back in time, it just adds an immediate 10 milliseconds of delay, and you can't change that. It's just that's how much delay you now have, and then that adds on top of how much delay is actually happening inside the system, how your buffer size, and how many samples does the computer get to read in advance of you actually hearing it. And if that's set up at the highest, which usually is about 2,000 or so, it's, you can be waiting like a second or more to actually hear anything back. And the quicker you do it, the more painful it gets for the computer. But this is the thing about all the Antelope stuff, is it almost sounds instantaneous. All of the effects inside it are happening with practically no delay. I think it's like less than 1 millisecond, in fact, which is phenomenal, because it means I don't have to think about the fact that what I'm doing is adding any amount of latency that's affecting my performance in any way I want. Not on top of that, DAWs are pretty finicky. They crash sometimes. And if I'm live streaming, like, the last thing I want is to worry about if my DAW crashes because I'm trying to do something really cool with it and I've just overdone it, or I've got to do one of a million different things to something. It happens all the time in writing, and it can kill the mood completely on your own, let alone in a stream. Is that you basically have to, you then also are inaudible in the whole process of trying to get back to it. You're like, guys, I just work it out, and it's horrible. Like, no one wants that. So things like, it's happened to me hundreds of times on streams, because it's a chaotic environment. But yeah, I think that's really why things like that work so well for me. And the fact that I can just turn on my computer, walk over to my drum kit, put my earphones in, and just choose which channels I mute/unmute. I can be going without having to think, which project am I opening? Let me make sure that my latencies are all set up right. I mean, DAWs are incredible, but and there are great low latency mixes that you can make as well. However, I just sort of feel like this setup just really works for me, because it's all about keeping like the flow. It's all about the flow. It's just all about feeling like, as I want to do something, I'm immediately doing it. I'm not thinking about doing it. I'm just acting rather than thinking. It when you have to think too much about how to do something, that's when the idea sort of starts to disappear. If you've had a spark, like a creative vision, a moment of imagining something that you're like, I need to get this down right now. The last thing you want to be thinking about is, wait a minute, which input is that again? How do I, hold on, that's going there. And that's the world I usually end up in when, lots of instruments, and lots of choices, but sometimes it can be really difficult. Otherwise, you have to have 30 or more channels, so you can have drums, and then, your mics, and then your bass, and then your keys, like I've got, but needing to make sure they're all available to the DAW at all times. That's the bottleneck, really. That's usually over USB. That's usually the bottleneck of what enables you to expand past that kind of channel count. Maybe it's just a drummer's problem, but I think keyboard players would also have the same kind of vibe if they've got lots of synths lying around that they want ready to go at a moment's notice.
Now, it seemed like it was really easy. You kind of just switched over from kind of what we'll call traditional drum sound over to that sort of metal mix. Yeah. Back in the day, I remember you've got the electronic drum kits where you got to kind of knob in and key in which kind of effect you want and everything like that. It seems like with this, which is super cool, you could literally just push a button and boom, you've got your metal drum sound ready to go at the palm of your hand.
Yeah, there's lots of hours that go into the work of making any kind of drum mix. And the metal one is great, but I'll just to give a bit of context, I came off 8 weeks of touring with Monuments, and I just wasn't in the mood to work on my metal chops. I actually really wanted to work on my more of my jazz fusion-y chops, make sure I can actually play to really fun songs. Like I can basically scratch that itch and develop those skills. They'll all transfer back to metal at some point. But if I just immediately turn on my only mix I really have right now is that metal mix, I'm like, I got to go build another one right now. And I could have done that in the DAW, but I really did feel like, you know what? I remember going into studios with actual outboard and analog, just feeling things happening immediately is so much a part of that analog process and that analog benefit, because there's no plug-in. It's just circuitry. It goes in and it comes out. Like, it's all happening as fast as electricity can move down a wire. So there's no real latency there. And that's the kind of vibe I wanted to go for with this, and start to actually maybe build up a library of drum mixes that I can say, hey, these are the things this is the mix that I like for that kind of thing. And then I can work on another one. So I guess whether you're doing it in a DAW or with an interface like this, you're still going to have to spend the time working out how to do that, because there are some limitations as to how many of certain plugins you can run and stuff like that. There'll always be something to work around there, but that benefit of absolutely no latency, practically no latency, and the ability to just send it straight down a Zoom call without, I could literally not even have my audio interface open, and I could still just play. You know, I could have a drum lesson without even opening up anything. But the absolute benefit is I can just use the Cubase for playback. I can build exercises in there, and I can play along with them in a multitude of different projects. But all of this is just set and good to go. You know, I can go through the process of importing files and tracks and bringing it in, but I don't actually have to get started. I could just take that drum mix and just send it to computer record, I don't know, like 9 and 10, anything I want really, and just go, cool, I'm just going to track stereo drums. It's completely like I can't remix it at that point, but I could also record just that stereo alongside the entire alongside the entire multi-track, so that it can be remixed down the line. But there's a tracking mix in that moment, and sometimes things just move quickly. You've got half an hour to work on something. If it's going to take half an hour to remix it to sound right for that, but you've got something that will just work immediately and you can work on it later, you can record in parallel this drum bus plus every mic with no effects, or with effects. It's completely up to you. It's nuts that I can, using that routing matrix I was showing earlier, I can just piggyback a channel either affected or unaffected, and just throw it to any recording output. I could record this voice mic with 7 different versions of effects. That's a very extreme example that I'd literally never do, but I might want to record it wet and dry. You know, I've done that for podcasting before. You know, you hear this nice kind of beefier sound of the microphone. I might want to actually record it without any of that on it, so that I can, you know, do that processing again to maybe fit the EQ curve of a different kind of podcast, or this or that or the other. It's like having those options. It's so valuable, and usually you can't do that without having a whole bunch more digital I/O, or having actual desks, and then being able to use what their routing matrix is, which could take your signals out to a patch bay and off to different places, and then come back to different channels. But that kind of setup is just so out of my ballpark. And once again, I don't have remote control of preamps. I don't have the ability to save and recall all this stuff. And I still have the problem of, how do I even ingest all of this audio into Zoom in the first place? All of the programs that exist for me to send processed audio to you, the listener, involve me going from the Windows or even the Mac world. I use Windows here, but to go from that world to the ASIO world, which is the DAW, it's a locked off audio like architecture. You can't just like assign things in and out of it without using some kind of bridging plugin, and then find some way of taking that mix and throwing it into something that Windows can recognize. And every single one of those tools has been so buggy that being able to just have that native ability to loop back processed and mixed groups of channels inside my own interface without running any extra software is like, this is incredible. Like, why wouldn't I just do this all the time? This is literally the best thing. It's the most reliable part of everything that I've got going on here. So if that makes sense, that's kind of why I didn't even expect it to do as much as it started to do. I just really started to scratch that itch of, oh wait, hang on a minute, I can finally do this thing. I don't need to worry about channel count because I've got more input than I can have recordable, but I can just reassign. It's it's a lot of fun.
That's wild. So can we talk a little bit, Mike, about the disconnect between being a musician, being an engineer? Because I mean, one doesn't equate. I'm sure musicians are going to understand some things from the engineering aspect, but if anybody's ever been around like a studio setting where you have sound engineers that they went to school for this, it's very particular, they know their thing. What is it like for you? Is it something that, have you always been into engineering, and what was the learning curve like with this software? Because you talked about self-engineering there. There's the difficulty of being both the musician and the engineer at the same time and trying to account for that difference and trying to make adjustments on the fly. But what is it like using that software and learning that software for you as a musician?
I think it's really enabling. I've always enjoyed playing with it, mucking around with the equipment that I have access to and trying to, usually it was always a means to an end as well. In order to join a band, I had to present my skills and actually do what I do on some format. At the time, YouTube was very young, and I wanted to put videos out of me playing so that I could find other like-minded musicians to play more music with, and to have a go at having a career of the whole thing as a budding like 14-15-year-old musician. Just, I had a drum kit, I had some mics, I got some kind of setup going and just tried to record it, and it's very challenging. It can be very stressful, but that trial and error of like making mistakes and coming back through and just doing it over and over again and slowly refining and building upon a skill set, I've always just found it very it's been very empowering, because I don't have to ask someone else to come and help me with something. So if I want to come up with an idea, it might take me longer to do it, but I've got my own day, I've got my own time to try and work that out. So, and I've made every mistake you can possibly make. I've got an environment here, a sonic environment that's not that pleasing to actually be in. By default, this room actually didn't sound good at all, and a good drum sound comes from a good room sound. A lot of the time you can't do that. I ended up resorting to putting duvets across the entire roof. It's like an A-frame roof, and I've just like hung duvets along all the... you'd be amazed at how well it works. It's worked as like a broadband bass trap, because there's like different distances between the duvets and the ceiling. So it's like, and as that triangle kind of increases and decreases, I learned that again, just trial and error, like how the heck do I soak up all of this low end where, I can't cut a corner off with a big bass trap. I've got too much stuff in the corners all the time. So things like that. And then when you listen back to it and go, you know what, that actually works. It's like, it's just the best feeling, because then you can just go back to being productive in that environment. And not only that, it's been a great source of work to be able to remotely session record myself for years, and then becoming a streamer as well, being able to present myself. I just feel it's the biggest strength you can have, to be able to show people what you do, and to remove the reliance on others. And you can save so much in not having to hire out for every time you want to go do something. I think there's definitely a time and a place to go somewhere and do something properly, but just being able to write, practice, and stream and record and all of that, I find that to be an absolutely essential and invaluable skill that I don't think I could be a professional in this day and age without having those skills.
Well, and to be able to stream it too, it's amazing, because it's like, whenever, going back to like growing up in the late 80s, the 90s, where you have, if you were recording stuff at home, it was just like, it was going to sound like it was recorded at home. And now it's like, you could be in a basement, in a 1-bedroom apartment, in a studio apartment, recording professional quality songs with equipment that you can just pick up at B&H or any retailer.
You'd be amazed how much of this stuff I actually picked up at B&H as well. Like, I actually have grabbed like quite a lot of the camera gear and stuff as well over the years. No, you're totally right. In fact, I think that in those exact words is part of what actually made the whole djent subgenre a thing. For those who don't know, the kind of music that Monuments plays has been coined this term called djent, which is the sound of angular, aggressive guitars, but it refers to a lot of other things, of this kind of progressive metal sound, this highly sonically crazy sound. But that thing with a guy being able to make music in his bedroom and make it sound huge and cool came about because of the kind of I really think it came down to like two or three things. One of them was being able to get access to equipment like that. Audio interfaces were becoming affordable for consumer kind of pricing almost, and there was software that you could get where you could have a drum kit in your computer. There were digital audio workstations were starting to become accessible for people without intense crazy hardware, like the first DAWs that didn't need the Pro Tools HD rigs and everything like that. And then the birth of the internet and social medias and forums, it meant that people could start making this music, showing it to each other just from their rooms. And that movement, specifically with Periphery, a band that I've loved since I was really young, I think always inspired me so much. It's like, here's someone who can make a sound in their head, make it sound sick, put it on the internet, and people love the sound of it and want to listen to it. And it's grown into a full-fledged live touring band and all the members have their own side businesses, which involve making drum products like Get Good Drums and all sorts of guitar equipment and just all these things. They came from a guy in his bedroom wanting to have fun, and that's inspired me so much, that ability to just do things and just have people be able to hear them. It's always resonated so much with me.
Yeah, I think that's the nail on the head. I mean, I don't know how old you are, Mike. I don't want to make myself seem dated here, and I don't want to date you, but I remember a time being 14, 15 years old and being in the band, and anytime we wanted to jam and anytime we wanted to record, you had to get into the studio. And so you had to rent the studio. You had to make sure the studio was available, that one of the rooms wasn't booked. Then you had to get the guy who was the audio engineer because you didn't know what you were doing. And, he had to cue everything up, make sure the mics were on. And now it seems like with things like the Antelope Audio, obviously there's a time and place for that. And obviously, when you're mastering a mix and you're creating an album, obviously you're going to all get into the studio at certain points. But it sounds like, at least for the beginnings and for when you're just tracking stuff for yourself, for ideas of working on songs, you can create something in your house, in your home, and then you can have your guitarists and your bassists and everybody else tracking their own stuff separately and kind of work together, even at the same time, via Zoom or whatever it may be, to stream together. And instead of having to all meet up, if you're in different places, getting on a call, just jamming out together. If you just want to lay down some tracking with the guitarist, you can kind of do that together and not have to spend all that money and time being in the studio together, because I don't have to tell you, I'm sure that stuff's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, and rightly so. Those kind of skills are valuable, and I find myself being one of the more technologically able in the room a lot of the time. Although with Monuments, I feel like my whole band, we're all the same kind. We've got the same kind of mindset. We all try to do this stuff at home. We just have this amazing environment now. Where there's just such an abundance of technology that's available to us now. You can go to a store like B&H and grab and just ask, hey, I want to make music like this, get the stuff, go home and make it, and move on from there. I think it's just incredible. Yeah, well, and to answer your previous question, I haven't experienced that to that degree, because being 30 years old, I was like a kind of a mid-teenager coming out of music school, and everything, this stuff was becoming available to me. So it was only in my very early years when I messed around with like MIDI sequences. That stuff was still, for a lot of people, they'd been waiting for that their whole lives, and I was so blessed to be able to grow up into that world as a kid, using, like, I think it was Evolution, Sound Studio Gold, Cubasis, VST, and programs like that, with like all sorts of various different things. But yeah, now it's just incredible what you can do with this stuff, and that's where I like to stay in that world of just being inspired and just having things just happen, and then wanting to go ahead and play it, record it, write it, develop it, whatever it is. Just move forward with something. Don't not to ruminate on an idea and not to think about I wish I could. To just go, what have I got and how do I do it? Do I have what it takes? Do I have what I need to just create that sound that's going on, or just to play on something? And a lot of the time there's a lot of opportunities going around. There's musicians who want a drummer to jam with. There's people who want to hear this thing, that thing, and the other. And I just think the way that it's moved to live streaming now, the way that live streaming musicians can do this stuff, it just blows my mind now, because you can have an immediate conversation with an entire group of people that can be like, I want to hear you play that song, and you can be like, cool, I'm now playing it. You're now hearing that tune, or I'm writing something, and someone in the audience can go, hey, how about if you were to try that? And I can actually be like, that's actually a sick idea, and immediately go ahead and do that. I just find that I find it astonishing. And so diving into the deep ways that you can take audio and throw it into different places really leads me to just try and call things out all the time, and feeling really confident with broadcast audio, essentially. I can't imagine how I think my first ever streams, I had to take like a second audio interface and just run it and pray to God that the computer could use the two at the same time, so that I could just plug the outputs of one into the inputs of another, just so that one could then be read by Windows to then get it out. And it blew my mind. I was like, you've got an audio stream here, theoretically, just why can't it go into the program? Like, it's coming out of one program, why can't it go into the other program? Like, just not realizing that those two audio worlds are just completely different, and it needs an entire bridging audio infrastructure that feels like analog to actually make that possible. And that's really where I really find myself so comfortable with all of this Antelope gear, because it's a few select pieces of equipment that just can do so much inside that digitally, and then I can then expand externally as well. I can have a couple of different monitoring outputs plugged in, and they also sound like, I thought it was kind of all snake oil when I was younger. I really thought that, like, when it came to like quality of outputs, quality of the sound of what you've got going on, I really thought that it's down to what you do in the software that matters, and what comes out is just a linear experience. But then I got the Orion, and the Antelope Orion, and I listened to, I think it was Carnival, I think it's Simple Boy. I don't know if you know that band, I don't know if you know that song, but it's one of my favorite songs of all time. And I just listened to it, and the music popped out. Everything was the same. Everything else was the same, but the music just jumped out the speakers in a way that I'd never experienced. Except for when I'd been in amazing studios, and I just didn't know I thought it was the desk or the room or the this or the that, but I didn't realize that the converter quality could produce such an immediate visceral reaction where I had goosebumps. My eyes welled up because I heard details in this song in my own space. I was like, this is what I've been listening out for. This is when I go to push up a compressor, or I change a level or this, and I don't hear the result. I thought it was just me, but it's not. It's just sometimes actually that quality really matters. And it goes the same way for all of the headphone outs, all of the line outputs that you can send into various different things. It's like everything I connect into, whatever kind of system I'm trying to do, however many headphone mixes for other musicians in the room, or whatever it is. I guess I kind of have now gotten used to everything just sounding really, really great, and I can really tell when I go into an environment and I use something that doesn't have such good sounding like output converters and everything else. It's just I can't even overstate the difference it makes. It's actually astonishing. I remember how that felt, and it's just I guess you never take anything like that for granted, really, because after spending so much time on other stuff, you kind of go, hey, this works. I can work with this. But when I go to sweep that EQ at 120 hertz, 150, when I reach for that compressor to try and make the kick drum do that thing, I see things happening on the screen. I see things happening on the EQ. I see it, but I'm not hearing it. I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially with regardless of in what format it is, but have you ever felt that that powerless as an engineer, or like, I don't know if you've tried with various kinds of mixing, but have you ever just reached for it and you've seen other people make it look so easy, and you're just like, that What? That doesn't do it.
Every time we try to get our audio good. Scott, I mean that's one of the things that's super amazing is that look, we all know that Zoom is not the most conducive platform for audio or video sharing. And when I see how
Stop
serious
it, Derek. Don't say that. It's the best.
It's a great, yeah. I'm blown away at how good. Like I'm sitting over here and I'm like, man, Mike's got like 20 mics set up. They all sound better than ours. He's got drum kits, all this stuff, and it's like, Scott, come on, how long did it take us to get even sounding decent? It's audio's everything. It's so hard to do, and it's like I know a lot of work went into it, and I know you have you have some great equipment at your fingertips, but the point being, Zoom can take all of that and wash it away, and it sounds great.
It really can. I mean, it does its thing with compression. Compression's necessary for everyone on every kind of audio internet connection possible. The only way you're ever going to get everyone able to communicate is that if you don't restrict it to high quality only. So and also bandwidth at the level that Zoom must be doing, the amount of data flying about all over the place is like, there's no way that you could be sending lossless WAV and lossless video around and everyone actually have any kind of a conversation. But it really does matter what it sounds like is what it sounds like. I mean, the fact it blows my mind, and my students always comment that whenever I just play some kind of groove, I want to show them like a particular kind of fill of like something like this. And then they're like, how did you, I feel like I'm in the room with you, like they actually, there's a moment that we have together that enables me to even consider teaching over the internet, because I don't know how I would do it otherwise. In fact, I've actually think the ATEM camera switcher that I have, and I think the Blackmagic camera, I think I actually picked up from B&H. And they made such a difference as well on the video side to being able to do that. But the audio is, it starts and it ends with the audio. It doesn't matter how good it looks. If I go and play and it just, I mean, even if I just left this mic on and hit like one crack, immediately you're like, ow, that's not nice. And then, there's just no way to do it with just one mic, and especially in terms of being able to make it sound professional and engaging and exciting.
And you're a musician. People like, if your video's bad, people are gonna say, okay, I get it. He's a drummer.
Right. Yeah.
But if your audio doesn't sound, there's a difference between, like you said before, it's like when you hear that really, really, like when you walk, if anybody goes into a music studio and you hear that music come through and you're like, oh, that's what music sounds like. Like you hear that you have like that frequency separation and you're hearing different channels and you're like, wait, it's not just all supposed to be muddled coming through the speakers of a Honda Civic.
Yeah, although the car mix test is gorgeous. The way it can sound in a car, it can be so good that your mix sounds awful. The moment you're like mix testing it in the car, you're like, hang on, I've got to redo everything again, because the environment changes, and then suddenly you're like, okay, my environment was changing my mix so much that I now need to change it. But
I don't know, what is that like? What is that like? How do you guys account? I'm always curious, because it's like, it all depends. It's like if you edit a photo and you're editing on a high def screen and then someone's looking at it on a flip phone, it's going to obviously translate different. How do you guys handle that on the audio end?
There's a bunch of stuff that goes on with it. For me, it's all about referencing. It's all about listen on at least 2 different things, preferably 3. So I tend to do at least 4 or 5. I'll mix using my, the speakers that I have, my Adams. I've got like a pair of Adams A7Xs with a sub 8. And that's great, but my room is messy. It's a room with the drum kit and guitars and everything, and like multiple drums up on the wall here and everything. So it's like, it's not sterile. Therefore, the room is doing something. So I try to keep the level low to minimize the amount of weird stuff coming from the room and hear the speakers more. And then I'll have a pair of headphones, like Sennheiser HD 600s I use. And sometimes I'll have maybe another set of headphones going on. That's why having a couple of pairs, a pair of headphone outputs can be so helpful to actually just listen through a few different things. Then usually I'll bounce that stuff, get away from the computer, go to the car, I've got like a little Bluetooth speaker. A lot of proper, like, people who focus on mixing, they have AirPods and they use them to listen to their mixes. So, and some of them work out ways to pipe the audio directly into it while they're working, so that they can actually immediately hear how it is X% of everyone going to hear this, because everything responds a bit differently, and yeah, you got to account for that. Usually with color, with photos, it's easier. You have a calibrated screen, then you're basically just make sure your night light is turned off, like the orange filter, and you're basically good to go. But like, and technically it's the same here, but it doesn't change the fact that sure, it might sound great in the perfect calibrated environment, but if it's not kicking ass on a 20-pound pair of headphones, it's not going to work for a lot of people, and then that's not going to work either. So I guess you kind of get used to, getting things over the line in a way that you're like, yeah, I'm pretty certain that whatever you listen to is through even just phone speakers. It's like, that's going to work, that's going to do the job. But it's you're never finished. You're never truly happy. You always want to do more.
Does that make it easier being able to do everything yourself right there, rather than it's like you have to rely upon somebody, and you're so disconnected from the process?
Yeah, I mean, I can do as many revisions as I want with me, and I won't feel bad listening to it and going, I don't like that, I'm going to change that. Whereas sometimes if 10 revisions down the line and you're like, hey, that thing still doesn't sound like I want, that can be a painful one, for real. But yeah, like just owning that process and trying to commit early, especially just know what is it you're trying to get out. Even asking that question, what do I need right now in order to do this thing? For example, if I want to play a song for you guys right now, I don't need to run it through a DAW, don't need to record it, don't need to remix it. So I have this beautiful option of being able to play it through just the effects within that board, and I can just play to a song as if like I wasn't trying to actually record anything. I'm saving loads of data, saving myself time, because I can't go back. I can't go back and change anything there. And sometimes just reducing those options and focusing on the thing that you actually are trying to get out of the moment, remembering why you walked in through the door in the first place, to come into the studio and come shared and come work on something. That's 90% of the battle, because to quote a good friend of mine and an amazing music producer, Mick Gordon, who composed the Doom soundtracks and worked with Monuments a lot as a co-producer, you change the process, you change the outcome. The entire input defines the output every time. You can't get a different out without trying something differently. So having the tools to try things differently is really important to actually being able to develop those skills and get the output that you desire. And for me, that is this absolutely gorgeous space that I've cultivated, and I can do things like just play music for, friends and fans over the internet and have a great time, and develop on my own skills, my own compositions in a way that I could not possibly do because of the niche that I'm in. I can't go to one venue and find all those people. The only place is right here and right now over the internet in a sub community that just can't physically exist with all these people in one place.
Definitely.
Mick Gordon featured on Cardinal Red.
Yeah, the whole of the new Monuments album in Stasis, actually.
Scott,
this guy.
I love that to your playlist. That's an instant ad.
It's on there.
All right,
it's
there
great.
we go.
Now, before we run out of time, because we're having a great time and we're going to run out of time, I feel like every time we get audio people on, we always like to ask this question, Derek and I, because we're always curious. And this kind of goes into that sort of listening and how, adding things in and changing things affects the sound. And so Derek's gonna love this one, and Mike will get this because he's in a metal band, so he's got to know who we're talking about. We're not gonna name them by name because we don't want any lawsuits.
I already know who you're gonna mention.
That's right. But how do you feel there's a certain band that took bass maybe completely out of the mix on one of their albums? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about something like that changing the whole vibe of what you're getting out of everything?
I mean, it wouldn't have been the first time I heard it. I've heard a whole bunch of death metal that has no bass guitar whatsoever, and I think if it results in a better sounding mix to the person making it, when I say better, I mean subjectively reflects how they feel like it is, as opposed to it being an afterthought, something that got forgotten. But if it's like you hear that as a creator and you're like, that's it, that's what I was hearing, that I honestly feel like that's all that really matters, because that music might not resonate with anyone else, and that shouldn't really matter unless you are just making things to be entirely commercial and only make things that can be monetized and grown and all the business stuff and everything. I think especially artists that grow into a larger state can then just do whatever it is that they're feeling like that works. You can never make the same thing twice, and a lot of people will just are impossible to please as well. You do the same thing again, they'll be like, why didn't you change? You do something too different, they're like, why did you change? So you've got to do it for you, and you just got to trust in your own ability to stay inspired and to do it for reasons that are pure to whatever it was that you were doing that got people involved in the first place. There are some things you can change, but there's some things that have just got to stay true. And for me, that is being able to make a ton of mistakes and smile in the process and have a fun time getting my way out of the pickle that I've just made for myself. And then when I shed and when I practice, it's all about trying to make that world of being, oh no, I've just made a mistake, actually make that into an opportunity as opposed to a disadvantage. So being able to improvise your way out of a tough spot makes you almost, as a player, or want to encourage things to go a little wrong so that you can see where's the boundary, where does my comfort zone lie. And if I hear something in my head that I want to do in the moment and just something completely different I haven't tried before, if hopefully it won't go too wrong, but at least I'm not so afraid of failing that I'm not going to try. I'm going to try it. I'm going to fail and hopefully fail spectacularly and work my way out and just make sure that at least I don't ever have to hit the stop button, just at least get through the song, pick up the accent wherever I can find it, because that moment of having that fun and actually enjoying the process is exactly what makes people, I feel, connect with the kind of performance that I do. They love just seeing someone who actually enjoys doing it that much. It makes them enjoy listening to it more, and it's like something special is happening. Every show's a bit different. Everything's up in the air. There's some chaos, and I vibe with that big time.
Scott, he aced that. We're putting that one in the bank. He totally
he played that very democratically.
He took that. He crumbled it back up and flicked it back. Actually,
I've been watching a lot of politics lately. No, I'm kidding.
Wait, hold. Now we got to follow up with an even harder question. No, it's going to be one softball, and then it's going to be one that, who knows? Maybe you have to think. Maybe you already have the answer.
Alrighty.
I want to know your favorite drummer of all time.
Oh, that's a rough one,
actually, you know what? We're gonna do this 3-part. We're gonna do it 3-part because drumming goes across genres. So favorite drummer, and then we're gonna do greatest metal drummer, and then greatest drummer of all time.
Oh,
those
are rough questions.
Yeah.
There's no wrong answers.
The favorite drummer is an in the moment answer. I can only give the answer once. Ask me 10 years ago, I would have said Chris Adler. Ask me yesterday, it might have been Chris Turner or Chris Coleman. Right now, I think it's back to being Virgil Donati. That drummer is just doing things that I didn't think possible. He's been pushing the envelope for so long, and he's at a level that is completely untouchable, but his dedication to his craft is just astonishing. And the things he's doing are very out there. They're not very listenable for like people who aren't really wanting to go to that active place and hear some absolutely mad stuff going on. But right now, that's everything for me. So I saw him play at a festival in Germany called Euroblast. He played with this insane band called Panzer Ballet, who I got into when I was younger because I heard them doing progressive jazz metal versions of like The Simpsons and stuff. It's truly something else. It's like the most wacky end of the metal fusion scale you can go, I think.
and I love the direction you went with that, because I never thought about that. Like it could change over time, or like who, like in the moment.
I haven't had one for a period of time. There was a time when I was all about Gavin Harrison. There was a long time I was all about Chris Adler. Like everything was, and he's probably the one that for the longest time was my number one. Still is in a lot of ways, still my number one. But my tastes just change and evolve over time. They progress. It can just be someone different all the time. But yeah, Chris Coleman keeps doing it for me. Tomorrow it might be him again. I don't know. It's just when I hear them
tomorrow.
Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. As for like the greatest metal drummer of all time, oh man, that's so. Again, it's like, is it taking
big question,
it from,
Mike?
Is it taking it from subjective to objective? Am I trying to say who's had the biggest objective impact on like the most amount of people, or like
It's an opinion piece.
My
opinion piece. Yeah.
Opinion piece.
Oh, opinion piece.
Because you gave that was a very well thought out answer. You had your reasons. You didn't just throw out some like talking point like, hey, I looked at the Rolling Stone magazine's greatest top 100 drummers.
Yeah, for real. It's a very personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so hard because there's so many that do so many things for so many people. But yeah, no, for me, it's gonna be Joey Jordison.
Yes, there he is. That's my man.
That's some wild.
Mike passed
stuff.
the vibe check test.
Yes,
Derek, Mike, you're welcome back here anytime.
Yes. our boss right now, Stephanie Gross, if you are watching, listening, she's personally inviting you back. You're getting an email right now.
I'm gonna agree with Mike on that one though. I
want to come hang out, like for real. I want to share some videos. I want to shed that stuff. But he's nuts. I mean, and an element of that is also in what he achieved as an influence to up and coming drummers like myself, who saw black export kits and wanted to get them and actually play on them. And I was one of those kids. But the playing, it was just so nuts. Like the things that they did off metronome, and just the way that they played, the way that he constructed his fills, and the things that he did. You can't see the rotating drum kit on Disaster Piece and not be like, that is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
like
seeing that live is absolutely unbelievable.
I haven't seen him live yet,
unbelievable.
I have a feeling. Along with an honorable mention goes to Mario Duplantier from Gojira as well. Holy everything!
Yeah.
That man can play like nothing, like no one else. He's astonishing. And greatest drummer of all time, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's probably Steve Smith or Steve Gadd or Vinny Colaiuta. It's got to be one of those, one of those drummers who really, who set the tone for everyone, who moved it forwards, who moved drumming forwards in a way that actually made the set a thing that you could even do anything with. So I think that influence has to go so much further than what any of us are doing with a kit. Has to go back to the drummers who made the kit really do it, who made the set, who wrote the book on it, So it's while the styles of playing, I have my favorites, and they're probably not within that. They wouldn't exist. None of us would be doing it if it weren't for them. So that's where that's where the greatness comes from.
I love that, and I love when it comes from the source. When you got to get it from a drummer. You got to get it from somebody who appreciates the craft. And when I say drummer, I mean an accomplished drummer who's out there doing it, not Scott Jolson who's wailing away on an empty margarine container in his living room.
Listen, don't tell the people that I go out into the subway station at night and have to earn
no. I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for you then when they pass by. No, I think that'd be great. I think it would.
Those subway drummers you get those guys on the buckets, man.
They're impressive.
I've tried that. They make that look so easy. It's actually insane how hard it is to make kick drums happen when you don't have a foot. Like when it's all hands, but it's meant to sound like a kit. Because in your head, you're like, yeah, that's that thing. That's that thing I'm used to. And it's like, no, that's a guy going like...
Yeah, with a garbage pail.
and they're making, and they're hitting every 16th note. They're hitting him all perfectly. And it's like, how are you? Nah, that's not real.
It's wild.
So their skills are definitely transferable, but mine are not into that. I would have to work so hard. I would have to do that for so long that I really admire those kinds of players. Like I admire, the more showman, line drummers, snare drummers, and stuff like that. There's things that they can do that I could never. Especially when it comes to like choreographed stick tricks, like playing traditional, being able to throw the sticks about and all that stuff. It's just an art form.
I gotta ask that before. You know what? I'm like, I don't even care if we're overtime. I gotta get this because I wonder all the time. And
I'm also dying to play a song for you
totally
and that as well. Once. But
totally.
these questions, I'm all
for
them.
So quick question. It's like, like what do you do? You're out there live performance, and everybody sees the whole hand up drummer standing up behind the kit, and they're twirling and this and that, or they're playing and doing. Me. Like in my clumsiness, I'm thinking if that were me, man, I wouldn't even have to be twirling it. I'd be playing and it'd be in like the third row. When you're out there, when you're performing live, because there's always has to be some sense of redundancy on any live performance, no matter what you're doing. Redundancy. What's your redundancy?
It's this. It's the drum. It's the stick bag. It's all the sticks that are right there.
And how many extra sticks are in there?
Hopefully more than I've got right now, because I'm not on tour. So in this moment, I've got 5, I think. Yeah, that one was broke. I've got one of those is not feeling so hot, so I'm not sure that they would all do the job. But yeah, it's at arm's reach. It's ready to go. There's always a couple of drum keys around for if something goes wrong and I just really need to like tweak a tuning or tighten something up that's falling over. Yeah, there's a few things like that you just can't not have. If you don't have them, then you're real screwed.
I had to know, and that's my selfish question. We're gonna let you get into doing what you do. What we've been, I know Scott and I've been sitting here waiting to hear.
Yeah. I was gonna lead with it, but I just when I get fired up about a subject, I just love to chat about it. So yeah, if it's all right with you to play us out today, I'd love to play an unreleased, soon to be released solo tune that I'm writing and will have written that is called "Sounds Like Fun." And it's just an attempt I had to get a new musical voice out of my system, something I've been playing around with for a long time. It's not really metal, but it leans on a lot of metal stuff. It takes a lot of influence from like Snarky Puppy and artists like that. And just, yeah, it's just something that I've been enjoying making, and I'm finally ready to start taking out into the world now.
Awesome. We're ready.
I'm going to go ahead and set that up for you. I'll be playing the audio for this. Will be coming through my DAW, utilizing Antelope. I'll be listening to a metronome, which you won't be hearing, which was a very easy thing to set up for me, thanks to those mixes. And the drums you'll be hearing will all be coming from the Antelope itself. The drums aren't coming through Cubase in any way, shape, or form. So with that being said, let's play some music. Did you catch the stick break in the middle of that one?
I did catch that, and I was going to tell Derek, I was going to say, and that's exactly why he's got a bag of sticks right there.
I'm so glad that was like the last thing you asked as well. At the moment it happened, I was like, well, I'm going to let this one. I thought I'd be a bit more again, I feel like that's the moment to be theatrical about it. If you're going to have a problem that's going to screw your playing up, just be like, oh, well, might as well throw a moment out there. Might as well have a moment with your audience, you know, with whoever it is that you're playing around, because it's just music. It's supposed to be fun. And if you get too bogged down with the details, you won't have any fun. And then how can you make something that is enjoyable to anyone else? You know, I think there are shades of gray with it, but that's why I love having an environment that I can just do this in. And it's a beautiful thing. And, I just love sharing how I do it and what I use to do it, and what it means to me to be able to come onto a place like this with awesome people like you and just show some gear, talk some shop, and have some fun playing as well.
That's awesome. And now look, Mike, we're right back where we started when we joined the stream today, and you and Scott were talking about how hard it is to be a lead vocalist and a drummer at the same time.
Yeah,
you can hear him not being able to breathe.
Yeah, well, this is why I'm trying not to. I don't know if I could sing and play. I want to, but damn, if I'm playing that hard, like, how am I? Where is that going to come from? You know, like breath is a finite resource sometimes. You know, managing
totally.
that is just, there's only so much you can do.
Oh, Mike, this was really, really, really was a treat.
This has been so fun for me too, man.
It's awesome. And it's like I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface. There's so much more. I'm like, man, we got to do this again.
Yeah, I'm always down. And whatever topic it is, as long as it's something that I'm confident in talking about and something that I'm passionate about, then I'm always down. You know, there's always got to be value in sharing that process, and us as musicians keeping each other inspired, I think, is kind of like a beautiful thing for us all to do with each other, you know, to keep each other on board. It's so easy to fall into a rut and to have trouble doing what it is you want to do, and sometimes just being around like-minded people doing things that make you go, yo, that's cool, is enough to make you go off from that moment and be like, I'm gonna do that now. I'm actually gonna do that thing. And that's so empowering. That's the moment I live for.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, again, I can't thank you enough from on behalf of the entire team here, who we seriously, it's like you couldn't have landed in a better spot, because, you know, it's like you get on with people and they're just like, oh no, I've never I listen to Nickelback. Are they heavy metal? And it's like, we're over here and it's like progressive metal. Let's get some progressive metal.
Imagine Dragons.
and you're being so kind to, you know, allow me to just go with my weird random fusion, you know, outburst here, you know, because it's not the thing that I'm kind of more known for doing, but it's a part of my soul, and it's just a pleasure to be able to share that. And I
love it. I love
it.
And I'm glad you shared it with us. You know, I'm glad that you were able to introduce us, because that ultimately we talk about it all the time. It's no matter what creative venture you're going off in, you have to do what you're passionate about. You got to do, ultimately, it's like, what do I want to do? You know, because then that's when you lose the passion. That's when you lose the drive. And I think it's really, like you said, it's about inspiring other musicians. And you might have people who feel locked into, I have to put out a certain sound. Well, no, just go with your heart. Do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, for real. Like, don't think too much about how you're going to do the thing later. Just do it now. The method will show itself at some point. But as long as you have something that allows you to put it down, then you're all good. And what you choose to do that with is down to what you need to get out of it. And for people like me who aspire to do as many nuts things as I do, this is just the gold standard for me.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to send another thank you to you, Mike. Another thank you to the entire team over at Antelope Audio. Risto was really instrumental in setting this up, along with our team here, Miss Stephanie Gross behind the scenes, making that happen as well on our side. So huge thank you to all you guys. But I want to give you the spotlight one more time, Mike. Let us know where we can keep up on everything you're doing. I know you got the Drum Academy and you're doing the Twitch stream and the YouTube. So if you could drop all your plugs and let us know what you're going to be up to and where we could find out more about it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Derek. So you can find me live on Twitch often at twitch.tv/MalyanDrum. That's kind of the moniker I go by in a lot of places. You'll see me around on there. I also do some of that live streaming to YouTube and release playthrough videos and all sorts of stuff over on my actual YouTube channel, which you can find me again, either Malyan Drum or just my name, Mike Malyan. I've also got a few other socials that you can find me on in your place of choosing. On Instagram, it's @Malyan, and that's spelled Malyan. And then on Facebook, you can find me with the same name, Mike Malyan. And yeah, you can keep up with everything I'm doing. We also have a drum academy called the Malyan Drum Academy, where I present digital lessons, where I teach monument songs and the skills required to play some of that more niche stuff in a digital format that's really easy to have some fun with. You can find that at malyandrum.academy. There's a bunch of free website lesson previews that you can check out there. Lots of goodies dotted around. And yeah, for those who are interested in playing progressive metal drums, it'd be my pleasure and my honor to have you in the community as well, and just have some fun with working it out all together and making it a more joyous process to do that really difficult stuff.
Awesome. Well, we dropped that into the comment section for everyone who's joining us across the stream. Scott, can we find more of your? No, let me stop.
You don't want to hear any of my stuff. It's actually, thankfully, it's all behind a paywall on MySpace, so you don't have to worry about it.
MySpace has paywalls. Oh, can you imagine how differently everything would have gone if MySpace had paywalls? Damn.
Oh my God. On that note, I don't think an Antelope sponsorship is in your future, Scott. I'm sorry.
Guess I'll just have to stay to B&H and the subway.
You gotta keep grinding.
Drumming.
And by subway, he means he's going to be serving sandwiches while working
out
his garage.
Would you like
band.
a foot longer?
I have faith. I have faith in this man's musical vision, man. I'm like, I want to hear it. I'm all for it. I want to hear how it develops. You just have fun with it. That's literally all that matters.
He's gonna be limping into your emails like, so where was that drum academy? How do I sign up for that?
I've already subscribed to his YouTube. That's it. I'm in.
He's in. All right. Well, you know what, Mike? We're gonna bring you back. We'll get an update. We'll find. I'm sure there's something we can chat about, right?
I'd love to. Yeah. Anything, podcasty, performative, whatever you fancy. I'm always down. I'm like, workshops are my. I really enjoy them. They're so much fun.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna bring you back. We'll get Scott back on. We're gonna let him. We'll have him play for us next time. We'll have you do it live. We'll do like one of those YouTube reaction videos.
Ratemydrumming.com.
This is too fun. This is too fun. These are the days we love our job. But huge thank you again to Mr. Mike Malyan from Monuments, and also pursuing his own thing, which I love in both the music and the streaming and the education. It's all about the education. That's what we do here. But that's all we got for today. Huge thank you again to Risto and the rest of the team over at Antelope Audio. You guys just provide us such an awesome event. So that's all we got in the books. A huge thank you to all of our viewers. We can't do it without you. We do it for you. But another edition of the B&H virtual event space is now in the books. We'll catch y'all next time.